There are two big problems with the running back position right now in fantasy. Number one is there's a lot of split and ambiguous backfields across the league. And number two is our young guys are going through some serious growing pains. So we got to go through the top 30 running back rankings for week 3 fantasy football. And I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for week 3. So please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now getting into our first tier, I've got Bijan Robinson at number 1 and Christian McCaffrey at number 2. So with Bijan Robinson, obviously the guy has been great in fantasy football and everything like that, right? Like the guy has been super efficient on all of his work, and he's also handling, while not all of it, the majority of the backfield, and he's getting basically 20 plus opportunities per game. Now that's already step one of what you need from a starting running back and a running back one in fantasy. But really where it gets a little complicated sometimes when Tyler Algier takes a red zone carry away from him like he just did in the previous game. Do I think that's always going to be the case? Of course not. And I do think that this matchup versus the Panthers is just flat out you want in on. And number 2 with Christian McCaffrey, he's taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Listen, one thing is super clear. As long as McCaffrey's healthy, he will be used into oblivion. I mean, even last week, he had 13 carries, right? That's not a lot. But then you see he had 7 targets. You're like, oh yeah, it still added up to 20 opportunities. So it's not like they're lessening his workload. It's just the way they get him the ball sometimes changes on a weekly basis. But the guy has been awesome this year as far as getting all the opportunities. He still gets in the end zone. He's still a good player. While we haven't seen the efficiency just yet from him, I still do believe that this Arizona matchup is absolutely one you want him in on. As long as the guy's healthy, he's going to be in tier 1 in all likelihood. And then number 3 with Derrick Henry to round out the tier, he's taking on the Detroit Lions this week. Now, obviously, last week was like an anomaly. Honestly, like he was so primed to have a great week versus the Browns, who they crushed, and he did nothing. So it's really bizarre. Like it definitely threw me for a loop, and I'm sure it threw many of you for a loop as well. This week I discussed on my defense rankings that I believe that this matchup is going to favor Baltimore. So I do think Derrick Henry ends up having a really good game in this one because I think Baltimore will end up scoring a lot of points on the Detroit Lions. And the bottom line is, more often than not, when you have a game like Cleveland and they put up tons of points, you're going to want Derrick Henry in on that game. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Jonathan Taylor at number 4 and James Cook at number 5. So with Jonathan Taylor, this is a guy that last week against a really tough defense came in and was awesome. I mean, this guy was so efficient. He had several breakaway runs. Jonathan Taylor was awesome in that game. So then he takes on the Tennessee Titans, who I actually secretly think isn't that great of a matchup either. But the problem Tennessee is experiencing right now is their offense can't hold their defense off the field for long enough. This game may change a little bit, but I'm kind of done putting Jonathan Taylor outside the top 10 because I just think that based on what we saw last week versus Denver, I think that he's just an elite back in fantasy right now. And James Cook at number 5 versus the Miami Dolphins on Thursday night tomorrow. This one feels like a smash play to me. And I get it. People are going to argue with me about having James Cook this high. Listen, let me just lay a couple things out to you. Number 1, this guy all offseason, including me, had people doubting him about getting that touchdown number that he got last year. Well, so far this year, James Cook has been exactly what we thought he could be. 3 touchdowns on the ground in 2 games. So this guy just has a nose for the end zone, and he also has 5.2 yards per carry on the season. He's been great. So I think that this matchup right here, if you look at the history of Miami versus Buffalo under Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, that is a matchup that Buffalo crushes them in. I want James Cook in this matchup for sure. Josh Jacobs at 6 and Jahmyr Gibbs at 7 to round out this tier. Listen, my thing with Josh Jacobs right now is that let's look at the way Baltimore handled this, right? Baltimore just played the Browns. They crushed them, but they didn't run the ball that much. And Green Bay, when you look at them, like Josh Jacobs has been good, but he hasn't been outstanding in fantasy yet. But I do think that just so many options in Green Bay are kind of holding him back on that one. So maybe this is a week where he ends up just absolutely being a tractor and everything is getting pulled behind him. He's just basically putting the team on his back and getting 2 touchdowns. Or maybe it's another game where they just split the workload. Either way, against the Cleveland Browns, where they're definitely going to score a bunch of points, you just want options in that matchup. And then Jahmyr Gibbs at number 7 at the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, people will scream at me that he should be higher, and I can listen to those screams. But I will tell you this, Jahmyr Gibbs, again, I think this is going to be a rougher game for the Detroit Lions. I think they will lose this game because of Lamar's record versus the NFC, and I do also think that with Jahmyr Gibbs, he was bottled up the first time against the Green Bay Packers. So it can happen. I do think that Jahmyr Gibbs has a tougher day against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night. So while I do think he's great, and I do think he absolutely belongs in lineups, I don't think this is going to be one of his best weeks, and that's why I've got him at 7. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Bucky Irving is at number 8, and Irving Kamara is at number 9. Now, with Bucky Irving, I will say this. One of the things I discussed all offseason, and I got so much flack for it during the offseason, was that I believe Rachaad White will be more involved in this offense than he was last year, for example, towards the end of the year when Bucky took over. And we didn't see that in week 1. But week 2, we definitely saw it. In Houston, I mean, he took an end zone carry from him, and he was also very efficient running the ball several more times. Like, Rachaad White was there. And Bucky Irving is great. I'm not here to tell you that he's not a great pass catcher and he doesn't have great fantasy upside, particularly against the Jets. That's why he's ranked at 8, because I do still see that upside being high. But I will just say, so far this season, his upside has been capped to a certain degree. And then Irving Kamara at number 9. Listen, I know people were upset last week because he didn't get in the end zone, but if you actually just look at the work, like the guy had basically 100 yards on the ground and he had 6 catches. I mean, this guy is legitimately still everything for this offense. So I understand he's on a bad offense. It's not amounting to serious fantasy greatness right now, but it will come. And at Seattle, it's not exactly the greatest matchup. But again, when you've got a guy who is everything for his offense, you just can't not rank him inside the top 10 until I see something drastically go wrong. I've got Chuba Hubbard at 10, Devon Achane at 11. Now, Chuba Hubbard is taking on the Atlanta Falcons this week in Carolina. And listen, Chuba Hubbard has had 2 straight weeks where he has saved his week with a last-minute touchdown, basically. So I am curious to hear the backlash about putting him above Devon Achane, because I understand Devon Achane's the better player, but Chuba Hubbard is so important to this offense as well, similar to Achane, and I think his matchup versus Atlanta is better. Whereas with Devon Achane at the Buffalo Bills on Thursday night, again, I think that if you just look at history, you'll realize that this is a horrific matchup for the Miami Dolphins. They're going to get killed. And while I do think that if you looked at last year with Devon Achane, he exploded in that first matchup. In the second matchup, he didn't do as well. So I think Devon Achane is in a spot where he could either blow up and just be everything out of the backfield, like receiving-wise, or he could have a game where he's extremely inefficient, because Buffalo will bottle up this offense as a whole. But I'm super curious to see the poll on this one. So what you can do is go to fsroundup.com, and this is completely free. You can go to our stats roundup page and click on any particular player, and then click on chat, and you can start a poll for week 3. So you want to go in there and start this poll, Chuba Hubbard versus Devon Achane. I'm very curious to see the results of whoever posts this one, because I am personally going with Chuba Hubbard this week. Now at number 12 to round out this tier, I've got Kyren Williams at the Philadelphia Eagles this week. And Kyren Williams is in a spot where it's a tougher matchup, and last week obviously was not great for fantasy football production. But I will say this, he is still getting all of the important stuff on the ground, and he still has a good workload. He had 19 total touches last week. Yes, he wasn't efficient. I kept saying, I think Tennessee is a legitimate defense. Of course, I think the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles. So yes, I'm going to have him at 12 rather than where I would have him normally if he was playing a better matchup, which would be around 10. I do think that Kyren Williams could struggle this week, but he is always a threat to get a red zone carry, which is why he can't be outside of this tier. And if you are looking for my opinion on your full team and want a full team breakdown of what you should do with trades and with waiver wire acquisitions and just how to make your team better moving forward, you can actually get a full team breakdown from me when you sign up for the premium subscription tier. And after that 12-day free trial is over and your first payment is hit, I will give you your full team breakdown. So if you do want that, go down there in the comments. There's a link there to go to FS Roundup and sign up for the premium subscription tier.
This is Ted. Look at him. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast. For the 3rd year in a row. And losing his season again means one thing. Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season. Huh. Look at him.
Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Ashton Genty at 13 and Travis Etienne at 14. So with Ashton Genty, obviously it's not been great. It's basically been just a little bit better than what Amarian Hampton has done, and you will find Amarian Hampton a lot lower in this week's rankings. But I will say that Ashton Genty, the one positive with him that really separates him from Amarian Hampton is that he's still getting the majority of the volume. He's getting 11 carries last week with 3 targets, and while it was not great output, it's all in context. This was a tough defense. Washington's defense, that's not the same. So I do think that there's more opportunity for him to actually have a breakout week this week because, again, with the opportunities that he's getting, he's going to break out at some point here in the next couple of weeks. Travis Etienne at 14 versus the Houston Texans, tougher matchup. I would typically have Etienne ranked over Genty at this point, but this matchup is not great. Houston, while they have lost their first 2 games, their defense is still really physical and they're really tough to run on. So I do have a problem with Travis Etienne this week, considering Jacksonville, listen, so much of team analysis comes into my rankings as well. And while Jacksonville has been able to put up points, I'm not sure what their toughness level is yet. And Houston's a really tough team. So I do think that they could struggle. And Travis Etienne, while leading the backfield right now and looks really good, I do think that I'm going to hedge my bet against him a little bit this week, having him here at 14. At number 15, I've got Chase Brown, and then at number 16, I've got Tony Pollard. So with Chase Brown, he's going to Minnesota this week to take on the Vikings, and obviously bad news on that front. Joe Burrow is out. Basically, I mean, I'd be shocked if he played another game this season, actually. And they're taking on a really tough Brian Flores-led defense. Now, the Vikings are having issues of their own. Like, this is not a clean matchup, and neither team is at full strength, right? So it's not like the Bengals are getting clearly disadvantaged by the Minnesota Vikings. But I will say this. Chase Brown, I think, is going to be fine. I don't think he has the upside, obviously, without Joe Burrow, like everybody else doesn't. But I do think that he has still a lot of potential to get a lot of the checkdowns. And again, if you just look at the usage on FS Roundup, he has been used a ton out of this backfield. So I do think that Chase Brown is still in a fine position. Tony Pollard at 16 versus the Indianapolis Colts. Listen, this is the first break in schedule where I can legitimately see Tony Pollard bringing us upside. I've been ranking Tony Pollard really low for the past couple of weeks, and I haven't had too many people fight me on it necessarily, but what I will say is that Tony Pollard has not come through because the matchups have been so tough. But again, if you want to look at usage, he's getting everything. Like, this guy is getting 20 opportunities on a gamely basis. And this matchup versus Indianapolis, it's the first real break in schedule. So yes, give me that volume with the better defense to take on as a fantasy running back this week. Jordan Mason is at 17 and DeAndre Swift is at 18 to round up this tier. Jordan Mason, again, this Minnesota team is not coming in clean either. Not only is J.J. McCarthy missing the game, but Aaron Jones is going to be missing the game as well. So Jordan Mason is fully in line to get more touches. Now, am I convinced he's going to lead the backfield entirely? Not necessarily. I do think they will have another running back involved in some form or fashion. But given the fact that it's the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I've got to have him inside the top 20. Because Jordan Mason has looked good on a per-touch basis this year, and I do think this is the potential game for a breakout from Jordan Mason. And DeAndre Swift at 18 versus the Dallas Cowboys, the matchup is awesome. Dallas' defense is not good for holding fantasy opponents to not scoring points. But I do think that DeAndre Swift is in serious danger right now. And not because he's played bad. He's actually not been bad at all. This offense, though, I think is about to implode. And that's the one concern I've got with Chicago. That was the reason I didn't have Rome ranked higher in my wide receiver rankings, and it's the reason I don't have Swift ranked higher in the running back rankings. This team is ready to implode, and it could be this week against Dallas. Now, given the matchup, I think it's a really good opportunity, but I, at the same time, am a little worried about the Bears, and that's why I've got him at 18 instead of really where he should be, probably around that 15 to 16 range against a bad defense this week. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Kenneth Walker at number 19, and Javonte Williams makes his debut. So, Kenneth Walker, Obviously, we need to go through this. If you missed me on Monday night, I always go live after the Monday night games to go through what I got right and what I got wrong in the previous week of fantasy football. And Zach Charbonnet was obviously my worst take of 2025 so far. That was just bad. I mean, Zach Charbonnet was involved still, but Kenneth Walker was clearly the best back in the backfield. Now, the reason Kenneth isn't higher in a good matchup versus New Orleans is because of the same reason I just said. Zach Charbonnet was still involved. So maybe it's a game-by-game basis on who performs better. I don't know. But all I do know is that this is still a split backfield. And while I do like Kenneth Walker, believe me, there's nobody who wants to put him higher than me as someone who was really big on him throughout the offseason. People who were with me the offseason, you know I liked Kenneth Walker. But I still can't do it because this still is a split backfield. Now in Dallas, it's not necessarily that way. While Miles Sanders is still involved to a certain extent in Dallas, and he actually did get in the end zone this week, that was because they scored like 40 points. Like, that's just not going to happen most weeks. Now, the Bears defense, they do have weaknesses this week. This defense is definitely losing guys fast. So I do think there's opportunity here for Javonte Williams. And Javonte has just looked solid. I mean, this guy has done nothing wrong. He's not exceeding anything, but he's definitely exceeding expectations that we had him in fantasy. He's not excelling. He's exceeding expectations, which is good, but his upside is still a little bit limited, I would say. Breece Hall is at 21, and Ja'Cory Merritt is at 22. So with Breece Hall, he goes to Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs this week, and I actually think it's a much better matchup than what he had last week versus the Buffalo Bills. I ranked him relatively low last week, and people were like, why is he not higher? He needs to be way higher. Well, do you believe me now? I mean, the Jets offense just isn't very good with or without Justin Fields. So if Justin Fields misses this game, which I don't know if he's going to or not, it doesn't really matter as far as the offensive production. But what I will say is Tampa can be run on. I mean, Nick Chubb just had a pretty successful day on the ground against the Tampa Bay Bucs as well. So I do think Breece Hall is clearly the lead back of the three, but there still is that threat of Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis coming in and swarming touches away from Breece Hall. It's very possible, so I'm going to have to put him lower. But if we had the full backfield of Breece, he would be pretty highly ranked this week. Ja'Cory Merritt, back inside the top 30. And honestly, last week, I did not feel like I was going to be telling you to play him this week. But obviously, we had Austin Eckler tear his Achilles on Thursday night. Now, this week, he gets to take on the Las Vegas Raiders, who actually did well against the run last week. And the other problem that I have, because listen, nobody in the fantasy community wants to put Ja'Cory Merritt higher in the rankings than me. I want this guy to work. I've got him on a dynasty team ready to go. But he still does have a problem because I don't know if Washington's going to give him the full workload. I mean, based on all indications, even when Eckler went down last week, they had Jerry McNichols in the game. You can't not factor that in. So I do think that this is one of those scenarios I'd be a little cautious on if I could. But if I didn't have much options, I think Ja'Cory Merritt could go in your lineup this week. And Ramondre Stevenson's at 23 to round us out. Listen, he just had to go above Travion Henderson. I mean, this team is using him, and they're taking the same approach that Pittsburgh is taking with Caleb Johnson, which is they're not going to play a rookie. That's just not what they're doing. And I should have known this, honestly. Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels are both old-school Belichickian coaches, so they're going to be slower with rookies. Now, I think that it's a great matchup opportunity for both of those backs, Travion and Ramondre, but I do think Ramondre is clearly the lead guy against a bad Pittsburgh Steelers defense, so he's got to be inside the top 25. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got James Conner at 24 and Nick Chubb at 25. Now, James Conner, I keep saying this, and I feel like a broken record because I don't feel like people are hearing me on this one. James Conner is in legitimate danger of losing his spot. I'm not joking when I say this. Like, Trey Benson is always involved on a weekly basis through the first 2 weeks. And last week he wasn't as involved, but he was involved in the passing game, and James Conner didn't have that much work. They're trying to limit his touches, so his upside is cut. And San Francisco, I don't view as a particularly easy matchup. So if this is the week where he doesn't get in the end zone, it's going to go pretty badly for you. That's why he's down here at 24, out of respect for him and also hedging my bet against the matchup and just him as a player and what he's been able to do so far. Not been super efficient, and he's not getting that much work. You have to factor that in because Trey Benson is right on his heels. Nick Chubb at 25 at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Listen, the matchup's actually really good. I just don't think that this offense can run the ball very well. I mean, last week they had a great opportunity versus the Bucs, and Nick Chubb did have that one breakoff run and a couple other nice runs, but for the most part, he was bottled up because this offensive line is atrocious. It's one of the worst in the league, if not the very worst. So it's hard for me to see Nick Chubb doing much better than 25, even against a really good matchup. So I'll have him at 25 for now. J.K. Dobbins at 26 and Jaylen Warren at 27. Now, J.K. Dobbins at the Los Angeles Chargers, there's a revenge game narrative going on here. So that is one to factor into this ranking. Now, also, J.K. Dobbins is clearly the lead guy. Like, it's not R.J. Harvey. Even Tyler Bidet had more production last week than R.J. Harvey did. So J.K. Dobbins is definitely the lead back, but he is not the only one still. And I do think, considering they're going up against a really tough defense, that has to be factored in. Because if he was playing the Jags, then I would want him much higher. But he's not playing the Jags. He's playing the Los Angeles Chargers in LA, and they're hot right now. So I do not want to face this matchup, but at the same time, a Denver running back is a great running back in fantasy. Jaylen Warren at 27 at the New England Patriots. The matchup on paper is really good, and Jaylen Warren's been really involved in the passing game. That's what's saving his bacon, though. This team can't run the ball. Their offensive line is garbage in Pittsburgh. And I don't think that it's going to get much better throughout the season, even against a weaker defense than they've played all season versus the New England Patriots. I think this is a tough matchup because of the fact they can't run against any team. So I do think that he'll still be really good because of his pass catching involvement. That won't change on a weekly basis based on the way they're using Kenneth Gainwell even and the way they're using Warren. He will continue to be involved as a pass catcher, but I don't see tremendous upside with him. And Amarian Hampton lands at 28. Listen, guys, we got to have a brutally honest conversation about this one. He looks bad. Like, it's not even just an opportunity thing. And he didn't get many on Monday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. I acknowledge that. But he doesn't look good on a per-touch basis. And I'll tell you, a big problem is when he fumbled that ball at the end of the game versus the Raiders. Now, in theory, that game was basically over, and it didn't look like the Raiders just had enough juice to go move the ball down the field on the Chargers because the Chargers' defense was clamping them. But I will say this, Harbaugh doesn't like that. No coach wants their guy to fumble, so it would not shock me at all if Najee Harris is more involved this week off a bad week from Amarian Hampton and a costly fumble at a key time versus the Denver Broncos. Even if he is the lead back, I don't want much to do with this matchup. Now, dropping down to our last tier with our last two guys, Quinshon Judkins makes his first appearance in the top 30, and Travion Henderson is at 30 as well. Now, with Quinshon Judkins, he has to go in the top 30 now because of the fact that they used him as the most, and he was the most efficient back in his first game for the Cleveland Browns. The more time goes on, the more touches they're going to give this guy. So even against Green Bay, a really tough defense, and I don't think they'll have much success either way, Quinshon Judkins is the lead back already in Cleveland, and he was getting involvement in the pass game as well. He's got to be inside the top 30, above Travion Henderson, who, again, the matchup's awesome. I want in on it, and I would love to play Travion if I knew that he was getting everything. But we don't know that. He's not getting everything. And this guy is just in a position to where Ramondre's playing well enough for this team to not be able to justify just putting him on the bench all of a sudden. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So Travion Henderson, his upside remains cut, while Ramondre Stevenson is continuing to lead the backfield in carries. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 3 fantasy football, click on this video right here.